This is the Open University, and we continue now with a program for the course An Introduction to Psychology. It examines the theory called operant conditioning in psychology.
The North Wales Hospital is typical of most psychiatric hospitals throughout the country. It's a large hospital serving the whole of North Wales, and at any one time has about 600 patients. The token economy ward usually admits people from other wards in the hospital, but sometimes people who would benefit from this controlled environment are referred directly to it. On admission to the ward, each patient's needs are individually assessed by the psychologists and nursing staff. The goal for each patient is dependent upon factors such as existing family links or total length of stay in hospital. After this initial assessment, the nursing staff work out with the patient their own token program.
Don't go over the line, so.
Tokens are given for 3 general areas of behaviour. First, self-care behaviour, such as dressing appropriately.
No stains. You've got stockings and shoes on. Your face is clean and your hair is very tidy. There we are. It's fine.
Thank you very much.
Second, active involvement in the care of their own environment is encouraged. Nursing staff supervise and award tokens to patients who, for example, help to clear up after meals.
Monica, come here. These are your 4 tokens for cleaning the table. Thank you.
All right. Yeah.
Very often, living on wards in large hospitals like this leads to complete isolation, and expression, for example painting, has to be encouraged. To do this, an art therapist organises this art class, and the nurse in charge awards tokens to those patients who complete the session.
Margaret, could you come for your tokens, please? These are putting in such an effort on the drawing. Thank you very much for trying so hard.
Time to open the shop, Rosemary. It's your turn.
The ward shop is one way in which patients can spend their tokens.
What do you want for the shop, Margaret?
Each week, one patient takes responsibility for exchanging the tokens for whatever the patients can afford from the shop. Tokens can also buy other privileges: taking part in special activities within the hospital, use of a quiet room away from the ward, or the chance to go away on a day trip.
Three tokens.
Nursing staff monitor the patient's development on their individual charts. When the time comes for the weekly staff meeting, the progress of individual patients can then be reviewed and appropriate changes made in their token program. It is the charge nurse who chairs this meeting.
Right, that seems reasonable. So can we now go on to discuss Pat? She's due for review, and as you know, she's been on the token system since the ward began the token economy programme.
She's been on the programme for 5 years now, and we can't demonstrate very marked changes in her behaviour, self-care behaviour over that time, isn't that true?
Yeah, definitely. You know, in fact, maybe we should sort of consider taking her off the programme and maybe just charting her and see how she gets on.
Yeah. But what if we do that and there's no change? What do we do then?
I think we'll have to sort of maybe consider something with Dr. Chandler later on.
As far as I'm concerned, there has been no significant change in Pat's mental state over the time. Her illness is inactive, but from a point of view of rehabilitation, she's got no motivation whatsoever.
She doesn't seem to understand. Well, the tokens don't have any value, presenting tokens, she doesn't know what to do with them.
I think after she's had a period off the tokens, we'll have to reassess her again.
So can we leave that as it stands for now? The next item on the agenda is the first residence programmes review, and that'll be Pam. As you know, Pam's joined us again after going through the token system and living out in a hostel for 6 months.
Yes, I've been visiting her for 6 months, and on each visit, actually, every time I went there, she was in bed. And as the fellow residents, informed me that, in fact, she hasn't even been out to the hostel. But since she's been back on the ward, she's gone to the ward, to the hospital shop, and that's about it. I think we've got to do something to help her.
One suggestion we could do, seeing she's only back quite recently, we could put her back on the token programme for a short period of time and try and fade that out again and move gradually towards her spending some time in the halfway house this time, rather than going straight out into the hostel.
So the halfway house provides a more natural environment for the patients, where the staff can ensure that behaviour maintained on the tokens in the controlled ward can be generalised to a more natural setting.
And just tip your fork. That's it. Just, apply a bit of pressure. Right. That's it. You can take your fork out now. Great. Here's some here, look.
Oh, they're nice, aren't they?
They're lovely.
Aren't they beautiful?
These will be great. Beryl will be doing
yeah.
fabulous cooking after peeling these. I think I'll stay for tea.
Patients are encouraged to learn new skills that could be useful for living back in the community. And also relearn skills that have been forgotten in the long time spent in hospitals of this type. Patients take responsibility for the household chores,
Doing very well.
preparing their own meals, taking charge of the house budget, and also organising the weekly shopping.
Have you got any biscuits or anything?
We have no biscuits, I'm sorry.
Oh, well, never mind. You might be able to get some while you're going shopping this morning.
Gradually, contact with the ward staff is reduced, until eventually it's hoped that the patients can live independently. But at first, staff keep in contact with the patients, advising on everyday household matters.
What we're having, bacon and sausage.
Sausage.
New potatoes
Yeah.
from the garden.
Yeah.
And
Peas.
Peas, that's it. Lovely. It's quite tasty, really.
It's nice,
And very economical.
Yeah.
Because running a house.
The halfway house seems to be crucial in the process of fading out the staff's involvement in the token programme. But is this the end of the story? Can patients really progress from the token economy ward through this halfway house and out into the community? We asked a group of clinical psychologists involved at one time in this rehabilitation programme if any of the patients had in fact succeeded.
Yes, the first lady who progressed from the ward into the community was in fact one of the most notorious patients in the hospital. She was regarded by many as being a totally intractable case. And in the period prior to the introduction of the token economy, a baseline period in which the nurses still monitored their self-sufficiency skills, etc., she scored extremely low. However, after the introduction of the token economy, after a period of about 6 months, she improved quite markedly. Then, after about 12 months, she was gradually weaned off the tokens. And in this phase, instead of receiving tokens after each successful completion of a target skill, she was given tokens perhaps initially at the end of the day. A little later, she was given her tokens at the end of the week. And then finally, she was taken off tokens altogether. She remained in the ward for a few months, for a few extra months. And then she progressed from here to another ward in the hospital and finally into the community. From a psychological point of view, I think what we can say is that the token system provided arbitrary contingencies of reinforcement that produced changes in her behaviour. But her behaviour, of course, is also an antecedent for other people's behaviour. And when her behaviour changed, not surprisingly, other people's behaviour towards her also changed. And we could say that eventually the natural contingencies of reinforcement eventually replaced the arbitrary contingencies of the token economy. And she was able to still perform self-sufficiency skills, etc., at a level that had been achieved by the token system, but was no longer dependent on that arbitrary system.
There are other examples, on the other hand, of people we've had on the token economy programme where the natural contingencies are maintaining very inappropriate, socially inappropriate behaviours. For example, of one person where we have produced marked improvements in her self-care skills and her self-sufficiency, to the extent that she's now progressed towards a halfway house. The natural environment, on the other hand, is maintaining quite contrary behaviours of maintaining her dependence on other people.
Finally, we went back to Dr. Chris Cullen from Ridge Hill and asked him whether or not he would be able to use Skinner's analysis of antecedent behaviour and consequence if someone living in the community came to him with a problem.
Yes. I mean, we're still interested in the causes of behaviour. We still have to know why people behave. If we can make...